This is Grandmaster Boris Alterman and you're watching Gambit Guide. So, second part of Belgrade Gambit, we start with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, knight c3, knight f6, and after d4, e takes d4, knight d5. So the previous lecture, we're considering here the different option for black to stop white's aggression opportunity with h6 or g6. However, important line, of course, is knight takes e4, which is just allows white to play queen e2, and after f5 we reach very complicated position. So for many years this line considered as a very good for white, and it was quite difficult to find for black a serious alternative after knight g5. However, already in this century, Jan Werle in the Hergoven Ascent Open Tournament in 2006 just showed quite important novelty, which I guess changed the evaluation of all this line. So first of all, let's understand that white is intending knight takes e4 and white is intending f3, attacking the black's knight on e4. However, black has quite strong response with d3. So this move is trying to just destroy harmony of the white pieces, since white just cannot capture with the queen on d3 after knight take g5, bishop take g5, and queen take g5. Knight takes c7, king d8. Is not working very good because of knight e6 check, and the queen is gone. So black could answer here some move like king e7, and only after knight takes a8 to play with the king to d8. The knight on a8 is just trapped, and black is intending b6 and bishop b7. So black is also intending to bring his dark square bishop into the center and to move the rook to e8. So this position is quite complicated. It's not so simple to evaluate it. So definitely after knight takes c7, black also could try and to play king to f7, which is more active. And after knight takes a8 to bring the bishop out, and then to play with rook to e8. So the position also very interesting, despite the fact black is having exchange down. Its position is quite complicated. However, even here, black is not forced to capture on g5. So in such a position, even possible to continue counter-attacking just simply by playing knight to b4. So now if we trade the pieces after knight takes b4 and bishop takes b4 check, so white hardly even could pretend on any advantage. So black is threatening to recapture the knight on g5, or even simply to go with knight with the bishop back, for instance in case of c3 and bishop e7, knight takes e4, f takes e4, queen takes e4, and d5. We just hardly even could think about any advantage from white side. So the position just quite even. Black with the next move is going to castle. So white cannot improve his position dramatically for that just one or two tempi we have. So let's back and look once again. So what alternative white has after d3? So queen takes d3, as we know, doesn't work. So we have only one move, c takes d3, and black is going with knight d4. So there is no way for white to play queen d1 because the knight on g5 is hanging. So it's necessary to continue in the gambit style. Queen h5 check, g6, queen h4, which leads to amazing position. Look at that. Black could take the rook after knight c2 check, and after king d1, and knight takes a1, and d takes e4. So white is having a lot of active opportunity for attacking the black's king. In case black plays c6, d takes e4, and only now taking on d5 and winning the rook after knight c2 check, king d1, and knight takes a1. So everything looks quite good for white. However, the bad position of the king in the center just allows white to finish the game almost immediately. So white just simply plays queen d4. So now in case of rook to g8, we can continue our attack with move like bishop c4 or bishop b5. Next is very unpleasant threat, rook e1 check, and black's king in just very tough position. Just almost impossible to survive this. All this looks quite interesting and just great attack for white. However, that important novelty came here after c6, d takes e4, c takes d5, e takes d5. Black is not going to capture the rook after knight c2 and knight takes a1. Black has just at least two very good options here. One is just to play bishop g7, the move which was played by Jan Werle in that How Govin Sesant Open Tournament 2006 against Jaromir Bednar. And after king d1, this is the only opportunity for white to stop knight c2 check, since bishop d3 could be met by even h6, and white is going to lose the material. So knight cannot go back on f3, since after knight takes f3 the queen is just hanging. Since knight takes f3, this is a check. It's easy to understand that white lost all his advantages. So his pieces are not so active anymore. The most important knight on d5 has been changed. So by playing bishop g7 and ending h6, so black is now fighting for advantage, and any try for white here to look for advantage, of course, that's very difficult. King d1, h6, and after knight f3, so black already could capture knight takes f3. However, queen takes h4, knight takes h4, and king f7. Here is clear that only black is playing for advantage. So this line becomes just not playable. In order to contradict the black's idea with knight takes e4, white tried just other alternatives. Some were playing bishop c4, very interesting idea, since after bishop b4 check, c3, white is using the classical gambit ideas of Danish and Evans gambit. After d takes c3 and short castling, white is having just enormous compensation. After short castling and queen c2, very dangerous position for black. So knight is under threat. Move like knight d6 could be made with immediate bishop g5, and black in the critical position. Move like rook e8 is also cannot be recommended. So once again, white could think about rook e1, white can think about b takes c3, and about bishop f4. So a lot of very interesting opportunity for white. For instance, bishop f4, threatening c7, d6, rook f to e1, or first b takes c3, In case of knight d2, white is winning instantly with knight g5, and black is enabled to stop the queen takes h7 with a decisive checkmate. Since after g6 we are just winning simply with rook takes e8, queen takes e8, and classical knight's fork after knight f6. The second alternative is to allow knight takes e4, but after queen e2 and f5, not to play knight g5, not to continue playing with the same pieces, but to move the pawn first, g4, attacking the black's pawn on f5. So this leads to very interesting position, and really to say it almost never happened in the serious practice. White's point that after g6, g takes f5 and g takes f5. Already now we can play knight g5, since white's aiming to move his queen to h5 with a decisive threat against black's king. So that's one of the game which played in 1997, continuing here, knight e5. However, after queen h5 check, knight g6, knight takes e4, f takes e4, and next simple move, white just winning the game. Can you find it? White to move and win. So we are using the very bad position of black's queen on d8. How to take advantage of it? So I believe that you found this move quite quickly. After bishop g5, black resigned immediately. His queen is trapped, and bishop e7 doesn't work anymore, since knight on g6 is pinned. After bishop takes e7, the game is finished. So this g4 alternative could be quite interesting development of all this line with knight takes e4. So after g4, so black has to solve the new problems, and it's not so easy. So I would like you just to analyze this position and just even to suggest maybe your solution. So how black should react in such a situation. So we continue. Since we saw that almost in all the main lines, when black is or accepting the sacrifice or just playing the west moves, his position is quite dangerous, and the complications usually favors white. So black tried to look for the more safe ways to solve his problems in the opening. And one of the important moves, of course, in the starting point of the Belgrade gambit, we just use a logic. The point is that white already, after playing d4 and e takes d4, continue playing with the same piece twice. Knight from c3 went to d5 without any serious reason. I mean, black is not playing any move yet against the opening principle. So black developed his two knights and just attacked white's center, so captured on d4, was ready to develop the dark square bishop. And instead of capture on d4, white went for the second time with the same piece, knight d5. So maybe here is some problem. So instead of going for the sharp variation with knight takes d5 or knight takes e4, black simply decided in many games just continue developing his pieces. And this strategy is not so bad. So in the game between Peter Svidler and Alexander Morozevich, played in 2002 in the friendly St. Petersburg against Moscow match, happened bishop e7, bishop f4, and after d6, so black more or less solved all his opening problems. Knight takes d4. Svidler is playing only now for small advantage, because he's allowing black to capture on d5. in case of e takes d5 to capture on d4. And let's say after queen takes d4, still white is having slightly better chances thanks to his space advantage. But because black just swapped too many pieces, it's just quite difficult to call this position clearly better for white. I believe the position is almost equal. However, Morozevich decided to play even more aggressive. So after knight takes d4, he's trying to use the black's advantages, black's dynamic advantages, that he's having more pieces developed and he's playing short castling, allowing white to play knight b5, which leads to extremely sharp battle. Knight takes d5. Otherwise, white just simply captures the pawn on c7, or in case of knight e8, if black is just protecting everything, so white just simply could move out the bishop from f1, let's say, to e2, and keeping slightly better chances thanks to the strong control over the d5 square and some space advantage, because white's pawn on e4 is much active than black's pawn on d6, of course. So that's why Morozevich is playing very aggressively. He played a6 after knight takes d5. So now if white's knight is going to d4, then after knight takes d4, queen takes d4, and bishop f6, white's king is going to be checked with a rook on e8. Knight c3 is also not allowing white any chance to fight for advantage, because knight e5. So Swidler takes the risky decision, so he is capturing the pawn after bishop takes b5. However, by playing bishop g5, black is developing strong initiative for just one sacrificed pawn. So the game becomes just very, very interesting. However, after c takes b7, bishop takes b7, queen g4, hardly even we can talk here about any advantage for white. Queen e7, king d2, bishop f6. So black sacrificed a pawn, but white's king is just completely opened, and in the center black is having open file for his rook on the queen side. So if necessary, we can bring the other rook to b8, continue attacking white's queenside pawns. So black light square bishop is also very, very powerful. So game, after the very sharp fight, finished the draw on move 47. And this is one of the ways for black how to play against this dangerous Belgrade gambit. However, this bishop e7 try somehow not everybody likes, because black is playing a bit passive. So instead of playing bishop e7 or instead of playing d6, so black finds another very strong alternative. So black moves in this position, knight b4, counter-attacking, trying to get rid of this white strong knight on b4. And this move, knight b4, today is considered as the strongest response on the Belgrade gambit. So what's the point? The point that if after knight b4, white is continued developing with the same style, bishop c4, black is just ready to simplify the position very fast. Knight takes d5, bishop b4 check, queen e7, and unfortunately all these moves are forced, so white cannot escape from it. So white has to accept the queen straight, and that's not exactly what we are looking in the gambit guide repertoire. So here, just instead of playing for sharp and interesting position, we are just getting into the quite boring endgame with approximately equal chances. Bishop takes d2, king takes d2, queen takes e2, king takes e2. In case black allowing white to capture on d4, white is still slightly better. However, black could play here c5, force white to capture on c6, and after d takes c6, knight takes d4 and short casting. White is still having only slightly better position, but of course it's very difficult to play here for advantage. So the pawn structure is completely similar. So this, I saw a few games continue with the same position. Especially it was played by international master Igor Palavodin, the St. Petersburg international master. So in his game against Igor Zaitsev from St. Petersburg Open Tournament, after f3, c5, knight b3 and bishop f5, black quite easily solved all his opening problem and game finished in draw after 38 moves. So white could try playing more aggressive, but of course more risky. And in case of knight b4, not to play bishop c4, not to play of course bishop knight takes b4, but to play knight takes f6, trying to say that knight b4 move was just a useless move. However, after queen takes f6, so black exchanged the most dangerous white's knight on d5, and here the most logical continuation for white, of course, bishop c4. However, after bishop c5, short castling, black just need to be careful and not to allow white easy to reach e5, e4, e5. That's why, let's say, short castling maybe is not so accurate, since white is having a3, knight c6, b4, bishop b6, and bishop g5. Some initiative for sacrificed pawn. The other opportunity in this position, instead of a3, to push immediately pawn after e5. And once again, black after queen f5, a3 has no time for capture on c2, since knight takes c2 will be met by bishop d3 and the knight is gone. So after queen f5, a3 and knight c6, we simply play b4, having quite interesting initiative for sacrificed pawn. For instance, after bishop b6, white is playing bishop d3, queen h5, and once again what I said is very difficult for black to develop his queenside pieces. So white is having full central control. The queen on h5 is not on such a safe position, and better pieces development just allows white quite serious compensation for the sacrificed pawn. As I said before, black has more precise continuation, and this continuation is d6. Let's look at it. So here, instead of playing short castling, it's much better for us to move the pawn immediately after d6. And this probably is a critical line. So after d6, white has to work for getting some compensation for the sacrifice pawn. For instance, after e4, e5, d takes e5. So we can try playing something like knight g5. And now, in case of short castling, to play maybe a3, and black in some trouble, since knight c6 could be met by knight e4 attacking the bishop, and in case of queen e7 we have very unpleasant shot. Can you find it? I believe yes. White to move and win a piece. So we have this great move, bishop g5, and just black's queen has to leave the e7 square, since f6 is not possible. The pawn on f7 is pinned. So the knight is going to capture the bishop on c5 with the next move. So definitely black has to be careful. However, I believe that after d6, this position still requires some serious analysis, and if you wish you can try it, because you have such a great already knowledge about the gambit, the ideas how to play in the gambit. So, and If you're interested to use the Belgrade gambit and include it into your repertoire, you're welcome. If you have any question or any analysis you'd like to share with me, you just could leave a message on ICC and follow the Gambit guy on chess.fm. See you next time.